All right, hello everybody and welcome back. We are going to start out today with a pretty simple little math problem. Okay, I'm going to give you 2 times the group 6 plus 3. So 2 times the group 6 plus 3. Now, here's what I want you to notice. This problem says that we want to take the number 2 and we want to multiply that number 2 times the entire group 6 times 3. Now, how do I know that this is 2 times? How do I know that this is multiplication that's being done here? Well, I know that it is because this 2 is right next to these parentheses. So the 2 that I'm seeing right here is right next to the parentheses. There's nothing in between. So that lets me know that that is multiplication. So how could I do this? How could I multiply 2 times that entire group 6 plus 3? Well, one of the things that I could do is use something that we have already reviewed. So I could do this problem using the order of operations. Now, the order of operations says that I would do anything that I see inside of grouping symbols first. So we've already said here that we're doing 2 times the entire group 6 plus 3. So the first thing I would do in this problem, according to the order of operations, is that group 6 plus 3. We know that 6 plus 3 is 9. So this would become 2 times 9. And then 2 times 9 is simply 18. So the answer for this problem, 2 times the entire group 6 plus 3, would be 18. Now, what I want to do today is show you an alternative way to do this problem. Another way that we could take this problem and get to the same answer. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to write this problem down again. So notice, exactly the same problem. It's asking me to take the number 2 and multiply it by the entire group 6 plus 3. This second time around, I'm going to do this problem using something called the distributive property. Now that should sound familiar to you. You have done that before. Okay? Distributive property. The distributive property says that I'm going to distribute. And when we distribute things, we give them to everybody in the group. So just for example, if you were sitting here in the classroom with me right now, and I distributed a worksheet that I needed you to do, then I would go around to every member of the group and hand you a worksheet. Okay? What we're going to do here is we're going to take that number 2 that we see outside of the parentheses, and instead of multiplying it by the entire group, what we're going to do is we're going to take that 2 and we are going to distribute him to each member of the group. So instead of doing 2 times the entire group 6 plus 3, here's what we're going to do instead. We're going to do 2 times 6, so multiply 2 by that first member of the group, and then we're going to do 2 times 3, multiply 2 by the second member of that group, and then we are going to add the answers together. So this addition sign just moves down. So this is what distributive property says I can do. It says instead of doing 2 times the entire group, I can do 2 times each member of that group. So the 2 distributes. He gets multiplied by each member of the group. All right, now, again here, I would have to use order of operations to finish this problem off. Okay? And so the next thing I would do is I have 2 times 6 plus 2 times 3. So I have multiplications and I have this addition. Well, we know that according to the order of operations, the multiplications would go first. So we would do 2 times 6, which is 12. We would do 2 times 3, which is 6. And then we would add those together. So now we do our addition. 12 plus 6 is 18. And lo and behold, that is the same answer. That is the same answer. So 2 different ways to do this problem, 2 different ways to arrive at the same answer. When we need to do 2 times the entire group 6 plus 3, we can work out the group first, make that 9, and then do 2 times the whole group, 2 times 9, and get 18. Distributive property says that instead of doing order of operations, like we did over there, that to multiply 2 times this entire group, we can get that done by distributing the 2 and multiplying him by each member. So 2 times 6 plus 2 times 3. And notice that it does indeed give us the same answer. Now, distributive property is something you're familiar with. So you have seen that before. Not new to you. Now, one of the things that I should remind you about here is that distributive will also work when you have subtraction. So let's say I have 3 times 10 minus 6. 3 times 10 minus 6. Now again, let's approach this the same way. Let's do this problem first. And I'm going to abbreviate here with order of operations, so OOO. And notice again what this problem says. It wants me to take the number 3, and it wants me to multiply that by the entire group, 10 minus 6. So if I follow the order of operations, it says that I'll do this group first. So I'll do 10 minus 6. 10 minus 6 is 4, so this becomes 3 times 4. And then 3 times 4, we know is 12. So we have a value of 12. Now, I'm going to come over here, same problem. This time, I'm going to do the distributive property. Okay, now what the distributive property says is that if I need to multiply this number 3 by this entire group, 10 minus 6, then I can do that by distributing the 3. I can multiply the 3 by each member of the group individually. So I can do 3 times 10, and I can do 3 times 6, and then put my subtraction sign right there in the middle. So each member of the group gets that 3. Each member of the group gets multiplied by that 3. Now again, following the order of operations, would we do these multiplications first or would we subtract first? Well, order of operations says that multiplications would go before subtraction. So we would do 3 times 10, which is 30. We would do 3 times 6, which is 18. Put our subtraction sign in the middle. 30 minus 18 is 12. So notice, this distributive property also works with subtraction. And what it's doing, notice, is just giving us an alternative way to get to these answers. So we've tried distributive with addition, and it worked. We've tried distributive with subtraction, and it worked. You might be wondering, would it work with multiplication inside the parentheses? So let's try that. Let's try 3 times 4 times 5. So notice what this problem says we're doing. We are taking the number 3 and we are multiplying it by the entire group, 4 times 5. So if I were doing this the order of operations way, we would do our group first. So the very first thing we would do in this problem is the 4 times the 5. 4 times 5 is 20, so this would become 3 times 20. 3 times 20 we know is 60. So if I follow the order of operations, that problem has an answer of 60. Now, let's try it that alternative way. So let's try it this time with the distributive property. Now, notice again here that this problem is saying that we are taking the number 3 and we are multiplying it by the entire group, 4 times 5. Distributive property tells me that I can take the 3 and distribute it to each member of the group. So instead of multiplying the number 3 by the entire group, I can multiply 3 by each member of the group. So I would do 3 times 4, and I would do 3 times 5, and then I would multiply those answers together. And that multiplication symbol comes from right there. Now I'm going to go ahead and put these in parentheses just to kind of emphasize that we're going to multiply 3 by each member of the group first. So 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 5 is 15. I don't believe there's any way that 12 times 15 is going to be 60. As a matter of fact, 12 times 15 is 180. So these are not equal this time. So I want to point out that when there is multiplication inside of your parentheses, the distributive property will not work. So never try to use distributive when your group is a multiplication problem. Inside the parentheses, if there's a plus sign, you can distribute. If there's a minus sign, you can distribute. But if there's multiplication inside your parentheses, you cannot. All right, so only one more operation. We might as well try division and see how that works out for us. All right, so one more problem here. Let's say that I want to do 4 times 10 divided by 2. 4 times 10 divided by 2. Let's do that first with order of operations. So think about what the problem is saying. We want to take the number 4 and we want to multiply it by this entire group. 10 divided by 2. Order of operations would tell us to do the group first, so 10 divided by 2 first. So that would give us 4 times 5. And then 4 times 5 is 20. Same problem. We're multiplying the number 4 by the entire group, 10 divided by 2. This time around, we're going to try this using our distributive property. Okay, so what distributive property tells me to do is it tells me that I don't have to do the group first. That instead of multiplying 4 times the entire group like I did over here, I can do 4 times each member of the group. So I can do 4 times 10 and 4 times 2. 4 times each member. So 4 times 10, 4 times 2, and then the division in the middle. All right, so let's work this out. Would we multiply or divide first? Well, in this case, we want to do these two multiplications. 4 times 10 is 40. 4 times 2 is 8. 40 divided by 8 is 5. Different answers this time. So notice the distributive property will not work when there's division inside of your parentheses. All right, so let's kind of summarize what we've learned here. Okay? We have seen 2 types of problems where distributive property will work. Two types of problems where distributive property will work. So I want to show you what those two problems have looked like. Distributive property will work when I have a number. I'm going to call that number A. So I'm being kind of generic here. And then that number is multiplied by a group that contains an addition problem. So this is one time that distributive property will work. When you have a number like A, and he is being multiplied by an entire group like B plus C. Now I want you to notice this time that I would not, on this problem, the way I have it written, have the option of doing order of operations, because I can't do that group. I have no idea what B plus C is. All right? What distributive property tells me I can do is, instead of multiplying A times the entire group, I can take A and multiply him by each member of my group. So I can do A times B, I can do A times C, and then add the results together. So distributive property tells us that instead of doing the group first and then multiplying by that number that's outside, we can distribute the number that's outside to each member of the group. The A gets multiplied by the B, and the A gets multiplied by the C. Now I could shorten this up, because that dot right there is not really necessary. If I'm doing A times B, I can just write the two beside each other. And likewise over here, when I'm doing A times C with the dot is not necessary. So I can write it without that. So this is one type of problem where distributive will work, when you're multiplying a number times an entire group that contains addition. And distributive tells you to multiply that number that's outside by each member of the group that's inside. Just like in class, if I distributed papers, each member of the class would get a piece of paper. All right, the other type of problem where distributive will work is when we have a number times an entire group that contains subtraction. So if we had A multiplied by the group B minus C, containing subtraction, distributive property tells me that to get that done, that I can distribute the A, and instead of multiplying A by the group, I can do A times each member of the group. So I would do A times the B, I would do A times the C, and then subtract in the middle. A times B written with a dot, we can shorten up and lose the dot. A times C written with a dot, we can shorten up and lose the dot. So distributive property lets you take a number and multiply it by an entire group by multiplying that number by each member of the group. Now, all of the examples that we've done so far here have been arithmetic examples. So they are things that you would have done in elementary school. In algebra, the distributive property becomes pretty important to us, because what it will let us do is simplify problems that we can't work out using the order of operations. So on all of these problems that we're about to do, we are going to simplify using distributive property. All right, so here's the first one we'll do. We're going to start out kind of easy. We're going to do 2 times x plus 3. 2 times x plus 3. So notice again how this fits in with what we've been talking about. I want to multiply the number 2 by this entire group. x plus 3. Now notice, I couldn't do order of operations on this. I can't work out the group because I don't know how to add x plus 3. Okay? What distributive property tells me I can do here, though, is that to multiply this 2 by this entire group, x plus 3, I can distribute the 2. I can multiply that 2 by each member of the group. So I can do 2 times the x. I can do 2 times the 3. And then I can add those together. 2 times the x, 2 times the 3. And I can add those together. All right. 2 times x is 2x. 2 times 3 is 6. And I've got my plus in the middle. And now at this point, we are done. And the reason we are done is that I don't know how to add 2x plus 6 because I don't know what 2x is. I have no idea what the numerical value of this is. So this is simplified. That's as far as you're going to be able to go. You can't add a 2x and a 6 together because you don't know what 2x is equal to. You don't know what number that is. So again, notice when I need to multiply 2 times the group, I get that done by distributing the 2 and multiplying him by each member of the group. So 2 times the x becomes 2x. 2 times the 3 becomes 6. And you know, right now I'm showing you this step in the middle that has the detail of what I'm doing. What I would like for you eventually to get to the point that you could do is that you could go straight from this problem to this answer without having to include that middle step. But that middle step I'm putting in there right now because I want you to see where I'm getting these things. Okay. Now, you have done these problems before. And you know, as we get into algebra, you know, of course, that signs, positive and negative signs, are pretty important. So I want to show you the way you probably did this problem, negative 3 times 4x plus 5, in the past. And then I want to talk to you about the way that we want you to start doing that this year. You're moving from pre-algebra into algebra. So there are some things that we're going to want you to kind of progress in just because you're moving on in math. And it's time to start learning a different way of approaching things sometimes. So this is the way you probably did this last year. Notice I'm being asked to multiply negative 3 times the group 4x plus 5. Now I'm going to simplify this using the distributive property, which means I am going to distribute that negative 3 to both members of my group. So instead of multiplying negative 3 times the entire group, I'm going to do negative 3 times 4x, and I'm going to do negative 3 times 5. I'm going to multiply him by both members. So I'm going to do a negative 3 times 4x. I'm going to do a negative 3 times 5. And then right here in the middle, I want that plus sign that I see in my problem. All right, so here we go. Negative 3 times 4x. To do that, you're going to multiply negative 3 times 4. Negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. And then what you're going to do is just bring that x down and reattach it. So to multiply negative 3 times 4x, multiply the numbers. Negative 3 times 4 is negative 12, and the x just attaches itself to that answer. Over here, I have negative 3 times 5. Negative 3 times 5 is a negative 15. And then right here in the middle, I have this plus sign, so I'm going to bring that down. So you'll notice my answer is a negative 12x plus a negative 15. Now, one of the things you're going to hear me talk about a lot is I don't like those double signs. I want one sign in the middle instead of two. So I don't want to see plus a negative. I don't like those double signs. So you all may remember, you learned keep it, change it, change it. And I know that served you well, but keep it, change it is one of those things that now you're moving from elementary and middle school math into high school math that we need to kind of let go. But here's how that would work. Okay, because I don't like this double sign, I'm going to keep it, change it. So keep it refers to this first term, negative 12x. So I'm going to keep him, negative 12x. Now, change it, my plus sign. I'm going to change it to its opposite, so the opposite of plus is minus. And then change it. I have a negative 15 out here on the end. I'm going to change that to the opposite, which would be a positive 15. So instead of you writing that answer as a negative 12x plus a negative 15, I would want to see negative 12x minus 15. Now this is the way you more than likely would have done this in the past. Now, like I said, I want you to start getting away from these double signs like this plus and negative right here. And I want us to kind of go away from keep it, change it. So let me show you instead how I want you to do this problem, okay? And it actually will be less work, one step less, and less writing for you as well. All right, so here's the deal. My problem wanted me to do a negative 3 times this entire group, 4x plus 5. Okay? Now, here's what I want to talk to you about. I want you to listen to this very, very carefully. I want you to make sure you hear what I'm saying on this. And if you need to, even pause the video, back up, and watch this again. All right? Each of these terms, I have 3 terms up here. I have my 3, my 4x, and my 5. Those are all either positive or negative. Okay? So when I look at the 3, this very first number up here, this 3, I know that he is negative because right in front of him there is a negative sign. So I'm going to write below that 3 is a negative. Okay? Now I move on to my 4x. Is that 4x a positive 4x or is it a negative 4x? Well, if I look directly in front of him, because that's where I need to look, what I see is there's nothing there. And we know when there's nothing there, that indicates that is a positive 4x. Okay? Now, when I get out here to my 5, okay, when I get to my 5, I see a positive 5 or a negative 5. What I'm going to do is look right in front of him, right here, there's this plus sign. And plus signs are positive. So because that 5 has a plus in front of him, he is a positive 5. So this is a negative 3, a positive 4x, and a positive 5. And I want to emphasize again how I made that decision. I looked directly in front of the number. Directly in front of the number to see what it was. All right, so here's how I want you to start doing these problems this year. You are still going to distribute, to multiply negative 3 times this entire group. You are going to do that, accomplish that, by multiplying negative 3 by each member of the group. So we're going to do negative 3 times positive 4x, and we're going to do negative 3 times positive 5. All right, so here we go. When I do negative 3 times positive 4x, I'm going to do negative 3 times 4. That is a negative 12. And then remember, we're just going to bring down that x and reattach it. Same thing that we did over there on the other side. Now, I am not going to carry this plus sign down here now. So this plus sign that I see right here, I'm not going to move that down like I did before. Okay? Instead, I'm going to wait on a sign. I don't know yet if what's coming next is positive or negative, so I'm going to wait on it. So I am doing a negative 3 times a positive 5. Let me kind of emphasize that for you here. I'm doing a negative 3 times a positive 5. Negative 3 times positive 5 is negative 15. Negative 3 times positive 5 is negative 15. So when I come down here to write that down, I'm going to put a minus because it's negative, and then I'm going to put my 15. So when I distributed, negative 3 times 4x is negative 12x. I wrote that down. And then I did negative 3 times positive 5. And I got negative 15, so I wrote minus 15. The minus lets me know it's negative. So I'm done now. Right there is my answer, and I don't have to go through all of that keep it, change it stuff that I did on that other side. So when you do these problems this year, the change that I want you to make is I want you to think about whether each term is a positive or a negative and work with it in that way. All right, let me show you another example. Okay, let's do this time negative 2 times a negative 4x minus 3. Now, first, let's do it the way you would have done it last year. I'm going to do one more the way you would have done it last year. And then I'm going to move on and start doing them all the new way. So this problem says that I want to do a negative 2 times the group negative 4x minus 3. Distributive property tells me...
May I have your attention, please? At this time, the cafeteria will be serving taco salad, so if you wish to eat in the cafeteria today, you must make your way to the cafeteria at this time.
All right. So, distributive property says that to do negative 2 times this group, I can distribute my negative 2 and multiply negative 2 by each member of the group. So I would do a negative 2 times my negative 4x, and I would do negative 2 times 3, and then carry this subtraction sign down in the middle. All right, so let's do our multiplications. Negative 2 times negative 4x. We're going to do negative 2 times negative 4. That is a positive 8. And then we'll just move that x down and attach him to the answer. The other multiplication we need to do is negative 2 times 3. That is a negative 6. And then again, we'll just slide that minus sign down that's in the middle. This was a subtraction problem. So we have 8x minus a negative 6. Now again, I don't like these double signs. So we are going to keep it, change it, change it. So keep it. Keep the 8x. Change it. Negative will change to positive. Change it. Negative 6 will change to positive 6. So the final answer on this problem should be 8x plus 6. Now that is probably the way that most of you learn to do that in your pre-algebra classes. Now, I'm going to come over here and do this the way that I want you to start doing. Okay? So we're doing negative 2 times the group negative 4x minus 3. To multiply negative 2 times this group, we can distribute negative 2 and multiply him by each member of the group. Now here's where I want you to think about each of these things that are on the board. This 2 we know is negative because he has a minus in front of him. This 4 we know is negative. He has a minus in front of him. This 3 we know is negative because he has a minus in front of him. So we have negative 2, negative 4x, negative 3. Everybody in this problem is negative. So here we go. First, we're going to do a negative 2 times a negative 4x. Negative 2 times negative 4 is positive 8. And then we'll slide that x down and reattach it. Negative 2 times negative 3. Now again, let me emphasize that there. Negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6. So notice right here, because negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6, I'm going to put plus 6. That plus lets me know that it's positive. So the way that I'm doing it the Algebra 1 way is if something is positive, I put a plus in front of it. If something is negative, I put a minus in front of it. Okay. All right. So let's try a few distributive property problems doing it the way that I've just talked about, okay? Let's say we have 3 times 4x minus 5. 3 times 4x minus 5. To multiply the 3 by that group, all we have to do is multiply by the 3 by each member of the group. So first we'll do a positive 3 times a positive 4x. I know both of those are positive because they don't have minuses in front of them. So positive 3 times positive 4x should be 12, and then I reattach the x. 3 times 4 is 12, and I bring down the x. Now the second part, be careful, because you're doing a positive 3 times a negative 5. So positive 3 times negative 5 is a negative 15. So we'll put minus 15. All right, let's say we have a negative 2 times x minus 5. So our 2 is negative. Our x is positive. And I want to remind you about something here. That x doesn't have a number in front of it. You all will probably remember when you see an x with nothing in front of it, there is an invisible 1 there, so that is 1x. So we have a negative 2, we have a positive 1x, we have a negative 5. That 5 is negative because there's a minus in front of him. So to do negative 2 times this entire group, I multiply negative 2 by each member of my group. All right, now listen to the signs here. We're doing a negative 2 times a positive 1x. Negative 2 times positive 1 is negative 2, and we reattach the x. Then we're doing a negative 2 times a negative... Then we're doing a negative 2 times a negative 5, which is a positive 10, so we put plus 10. Negative 2x plus 10 is the answer. Let's say we have a negative 6 times a negative 2x minus 4. So my 6 is a negative 6, my 2 is a negative 2, my 4 is a negative 4. Distributive property tells me that to multiply negative 6 by this entire group, I multiply negative 6 by each member of that group. So I do negative 6 times negative 2. That gives me a positive 12, and I reattach x. Negative 6 times negative 4 gives me a positive 24, so I put plus 24. So notice, if you do it this way, there's no work to show and there's only one step. Now, let me show you this. Let's say I have 5x minus 1 times 3. So notice what's different about this problem. The number that I want to distribute is to the right of the parentheses. But notice I'm still doing the entire group times 3. So it's just like these others. We're trying to multiply the group times the number. So what I would suggest you do on one like this is that you move the 3 back up to the front of the problem. You still want to multiply 3 times that entire group. The 3 is positive. The 5 is positive. The 1 is negative. Now, distributive property tells me that to multiply 3 times this group, I need to do 3 times each member of the group. So 3 times 5x. 3 times 5 is 15. Reattach the x. And then 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. So I write minus 3. Now, there's one more type of problem that I need to show you here before I send you off to practice. And that is this problem. Now, the thing you'll notice that's different here is that in front of the parentheses, I don't see a number. All I see is a negative sign. what we need to understand here is that when I see no number in front of these parentheses, there's still that invisible 1 that's sitting there. So when I see this problem, I should recognize that I am trying to do -1 times this entire group. Now, my 1 is negative. My 5 is positive because there's nothing sitting right here in front of him. And my 7 is negative because there's this minus in front of him. So distributive says that to do -1 times this group, I do -1 times each member. So first, -1 times 5x. -1 times +5 is -5. Reattach that x. And then this second part's where we've got to be careful. We're doing a -1 times a -7. -1 times -7 is +7. So because it's positive, I'm going to put a plus here when I write it in my answer. So watch out for those invisible 1s. Anytime you're looking at one of these problems and you're not seeing that number sitting there, you can add those invisible 1s. All right, that is a quick review of the distributive property. You take that number outside that's being multiplied by your group, and you multiply it by each member of the group. If you have any questions, certainly let me know. Your assignment for today is attached in Schoology, and if you have any issues completing that, I want to hear from you. Y'all have a good day.